welcome to ShrinkChicks.
Welcome to
Am
ShrinkChicks.
Am I welcoming you or other people?
I'm not sure. Please welcome me. I think I need it.
Tell me. You're welcome here in this space. How are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. And I have to say, this morning, I loved how you texted me and you told me the 2 things you're excited about today. I hope you do that every morning.
Do you
And
want me to do that every morning to you?
I would really like that. It just felt like a positive, way to start my day. And I had to sit and think about what am I excited about today? So it really got me thinking.
And you said pumpkin spice lattes.
Yeah.
That's what you answered me with.
Just
But
love
mine
the
was
fall.
like one thing I excited about and one thing I excited to get the fuck over with. Right? Like I am like,
Yes.
sometimes it's okay to be like, oh my God, I get to like get this thing done that's been kind of weighing over my head and I don't particularly want to do.
Right.
And maybe
100.
that's how people feel with dealing with people in their life that isn't doing the work.
Wow,
Did I
there's the
connect it?
transition. You should be like a professional transitioner.
We recently got a very negative podcast comment about my East Coast accent.
What did it say? It was actually amazing.
It
Also,
said like
and
this show would be amazing if it wasn't for the girl with the East Coast accent that talks so much.
maybe they're talking about me.
Do you think?
Definitely not. Definitely not. There's no
What they
chance.
don't realize is you want me to talk more. I'm literally
Please.
this
Please.
is
Emmalee. So after we got that, Emmalee was like, that's it. I'm not talking in the next one. I said, don't you fucking dare.
But like, okay, why don't you have an East Coast accent? We grew up like 30 minutes from each other.
It's kind of like the thing where we talk about because you're like 9 months younger than me, you're so much younger than me.
And because I grew up 30 miles south of you, I have an
You
East
are
Coast accent.
so much more East Coast than me. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, but listen, you are who you are.
I just don't think people are talking about men's voices, right? I do not think men's
Wow.
podcasts nobody's like, oh, Joe Rogan's accent's so fucking annoying. They're like, people only make comments about women's voices and my
True.
vocal fry
I
and my
mean,
annoying accent. I don't know.
I think your vocal fry is beautiful. Okay. And whoever said that to you can listen to a different podcast.
Well, I think she said she was going to.
Good. That's positive. That's positive.
And so let's talk about how to deal with difficult people in your life.
Wow. Who aren't doing the work. And are
just writing anonymous reviews.
Yeah, which we get, it's easier to hide behind.
I get it. It's valid. It's fucking whatever. You're having a bad day. I'm a good person to take it out on. I understand that in life. Fine. A lot of people said, right? We often write on Instagram, like, what do you want to hear an episode about? And tons of people wrote in, is like, well, what the fuck are you supposed to do? Y'all talk about like doing the work and how do you do this? But what about people in our lives that don't, right? And there's that very funny meme that's like, the majority of people that are in therapy are to deal with people in their lives that should be in therapy.
Right. And how many of us feel that? Raise your hand while you're listening to this podcast. If you are watching on YouTube or any of actually YouTube's the only thing just YouTube. On, you will see that both of our hands are raised, even us as therapists.
Yes.
I'm wearing a rocker shirt today. Is that why?
No. Wow. You are, was that part of your Nuuly?
No, I got this with you.
Oh my God. Is that the vintage one from the store in LA?
Sure is.
Wow. What band is it? She doesn't even fucking know. She definitely doesn't know the music.
The Rolling Stones. I don't.
Name one Rolling Stones song.
I'm that girl. I am that girl. And I'm going to accept it. I will
admit
it.
All right. Okay. On topic. How the fuck are you supposed to deal with these people? How the heck are you supposed to deal with these people? What do you think, Jen? What do you got, baby? Start us off.
So the first thing that comes to my mind is that if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably on your therapeutic journey, right? If you're like
some
deep into this podcast, you're into some type of healing. One of the hardest things that I think that comes up when you're on your healing journey is that you are learning so much stuff that is changing your life. You are seeing the world differently. You are seeing yourself differently. You're seeing your relationships differently. And it is changing the way in which you interact with the world. The tough thing about that is others in your life aren't at that same point. And so you're seeing this and you're like, oh my God, this is like, I need to tell everyone about this. This is so wild. But if other people in your life are not at the point in which they are able to hear this or take this in or go to therapy themselves, they're going to be resistant to that. And that can be so frustrating when you are learning something that is helping you tremendously.
Mm.
You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Well, it's like it also feels like these people are rejecting a whole part of you, right? Like if you're doing this stuff and you're feeling really proud of it, and then you feel like it's minimized. Somebody asked a question like, I really like this question. Someone wrote in and was like, how are you supposed to get anywhere with them when they see your communication as being sensitive?
Hmm.
So like you try to set up boundaries, you try to say something, and like, God, this is just you being sensitive. Jen, how many times you have been felt that in your life?
My whole life. And okay, so I'm going to answer that one. Ready? The way in which I have learned to process that is that when other people are telling you that you're sensitive, what they are really saying is, I haven't done my own work enough to be able to process your emotions and to be able to sit with your emotions and to be able to hold space for your emotions. That
Yeah.
it isn't about you being too sensitive, it's about they haven't gotten to the place where they can sit with that.
Mm.
And they aren't able to sit with their own emotions. They aren't able to give themselves the space for their own feelings. And that's why when you express yourself, it's so much easier for them to shut you down by saying you're way too sensitive.
Well, it's also one of those things I always think about, which is that like, right, like if I view everything I do as sensitive or I don't give myself any self-compassion, then of course when you come to me, I'm not gonna hold any space for you for that.
Right.
But I also think about like times in my life where someone has said, like, oh, like you've hurt me, and it genuinely was intentional. It is so easy for me to be like, I had no idea.
Right.
Like, I didn't realize this was a trigger for you. You know what I mean? Like, it is so easy for me to be like, oh my gosh, like didn't even realize.
Right.
Now, the times that I haven't been able to take that from people is times that I did kind of want to upset them and that I was annoyed with them when they brought it up. Let's be
Mm,
honest, right? Like
wow.
nobody likes saying that part of herself, but like BS that you have
Yes.
never done something passive aggressive and then didn't want to take responsibility for your passive aggressiveness.
Right. You're like, what are you talking? Well, isn't that the reason for being passive aggressive?
The
Is
passivity.
the passivity of it is that like the reason why you can be passive aggressive is because if someone comes to you and says, hey, why are you doing this? You could be like, what are you talking about? Right.
Yeah.
Where you don't take responsibility for it, which is why it is so much more difficult to go to someone who's being passive aggressive
Yeah.
and say like, hey, are you doing this? Because they can shut you down so much
Yeah.
easier.
Okay, wait. So as you know, I'm so close to my sister-in-law. She listens to every episode. Hi, darling. I love you.
Hi.
And
Hi.
there's been so many times that she has felt like I was saying something about her. Like, so recently in the in-laws episode, I talked about like we can't do the holidays the same way this year. Like I had talked about this, and she was like, "Hey, like, was that your way of saying like, was that your way of saying like that you're not gonna be home for Thanksgiving, all this stuff?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, you misread that. I was saying I won't be going to the other place."
I actually will be there.
I
This
was like,
time
"No,
I will
no,
be
no."
with you.
Yes, I was like, "No, no, you misread that. I will be home for all the holidays this year. I'm no longer driving," is what I was saying.
Right. Right. It's
But I
good.
think that, like, and that's what I mean, so it was so easy for me to come at that and be like, "Oh, no, no." Like, totally an accident, didn't see it. If that was me passive aggressively saying something, I would have probably been more defensive of, like I mean, as I said on the show, like, I just haven't figured out the holiday plans. And I was like, "No, no, no, let me be clear."
If you say that in any conversation, like as I said on the show, I will
I
die.
mean, you would
I would
be the
die.
lamest thing ever.
It would be so lame.
But so okay, right? So like that's one of the things. So like how somebody responds to you and reacts to you is a lot of information. And one of
Right.
the things I have really been working on my own journey, we've been talking about a lot, is harden the inside, soften the outside. Right. And we have this idea when we think about boundaries that it should be hard outside, soft inside, right? I hold this hard boundary. It doesn't. I want you to think about actually switching those two things. Hardening the inside is like what Brene Brown talks about of like standing your sacred ground, but basically just like, I know for me what is right, and so the other stuff, I don't need to come out of like such like 100% all the time.
Oh yeah. And I think that that can be such a hard, difficult thing to be able to hold on to. Um, and so I think you're right. And I think that there's, we were talking a lot about sensitivity, and we were talking about people holding space for you. And if they're unable to do that, I think we're so much quicker to get defensive in that. And when you get defensive, you're getting pulled into that to say like, oh, you're right, I am too sensitive, right? You're like almost by getting defensive, you're saying like, oh, is this true of me, right? As
Mm,
opposed to, I am allowed to have these sensitivities, I'm allowed to feel this way, and I can understand that that's not something that you're comfortable with, but it's not your job to change how you're feeling about it, right? Maybe your expression of that can change because the other person is unable to hold space for you. But I want you to really sit with that and process the fact that you're allowed to, just because someone else is having a challenging time holding space for you, does not mean that you cannot hold that space for yourself. And that's
okay.
something I want you to sit with.
Okay. I have another good question somebody wrote in. How to respond to those who think they're doing the work, but not actually. I will say this. I don't think we get to define for other people what is their journey, right? So if somebody is, it might be that like, okay, we're thinking like your priorities are off. You should be working on this thing, not this thing. Like we don't get to do that. People deal with
I have never done that before in my relationship. Never.
really tell me how easy that was to never do that.
Yeah. As a therapist, you see all of the things that in your partner that you're like, I think you could work on this, this, and this. And then
Mhm.
you finally get them into therapy. They go to therapy and they're like, oh, I talked about this. And you're like, shit.
Yeah.
You had so many other things to talk about. I mean,
Yeah.
and I say that to myself internally, but externally, I say, great, like good for you. Right. So I think that that's a piece of it. You
Yeah.
might have an idea of things that you want certain people in your life to work on. That can take time. Like it can take a lot of time for them to get there. If you think about your own therapeutic journey, think about when you started therapy or when you started kind of looking into yourself, and then maybe where you are now and how much time it took to get you to the place that you are. I think when you are so kind of engrossed in your own journey, you forget how long it took you to get there. And when you see someone else doing it, you're like, okay, well, hurry up, like get to this place. I want you to get there.
Ooh, that is such a great point. The like, the speed we want for other people, especially if I mean, I hear this a ton in heterosexual relationships of like, I've been doing this work for 5 years. My partner's just starting to do this work. And like, but I'm like so over it, right? Like, well, like, we don't get to decide the speed of things.
Yeah.
But what we do get to decide is like how we navigate that, how
Yeah.
we handle it, how we hold on to ourselves. I mean, so many people wrote in questions, how do I get through to them? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just set boundaries for yourself and say, like, this person is truly not going to work on their relationship with drinking. And so, does that mean I don't drink with them? Does that mean I say something? Does that mean I let them know I'm uncomfortable with it? Right? Like, how am I going to handle this part of my responsibility? Right? Like, sometimes it's really not about the other person because we don't get choice there.
And I think that's something to ask yourself. Like, if you find yourself really stuck in that, if you're like, whoa, my partner's just starting this and I want them to speed up, what is going on for you? Right?
Mm,
Like, what is challenging about that for you? Um, what is it leading to in your relationship? If this is your romantic relationship or any friendship, whatever relationship with your family, what is that? Is that leading to disconnection? Is that leading to you being unattracted to that? Whatever it is, I would ask, try to turn inward and saying, what is this doing within our relationship? How is this affecting how I'm seeing my partner, how I'm seeing this person? Um, and then go from there. Cause I think so often we turn outward and say, well, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, as opposed to turn inward and say, well, what is this doing to me?
yeah.
Or like, what am I struggling with in this?
Our couples therapist says to us is everyone gets a voice, not everyone gets their way. So you
Love
can
her.
say stuff, doesn't mean you're coming out with your way done, right? Like,
Right.
but that's the point is also like, you shouldn't get your way all the time. If you get your way all the fucking time, you're gonna be entitled, right?
Right.
Like, it's the ability to sit here and say, like, you know what? I got to speak my piece. Maybe nothing came from it, but I know that I spoke up and I did my thing. And
And
that's
I
just sometimes all we can do.
Right. And my partner heard me, right? That's I think what happens is that your partner can hear you, but also make the same decision,
Yeah.
right? Like your partner can really hear what you're saying and validate the fact that this might be frustrating for you, but still be on their own journey
Yeah.
and making decisions for themselves. Just because they hear you doesn't mean you get to control their decisions.
Somebody said people that claim they are but are showing no signs of improvement after several years. I guess then you have to decide what you do with that, right? I'm gonna go hard on my couples there. Did you hear that?
What was that? What was that? I heard it, but
Something
what
just
was
fell down over here. I apologize. I
That's okay.
apologize that hopefully the mic didn't pick it up.
That they
Hope they
did
cut
it.
that out. Okay. Um, so like something that like oh no, where was I going to the snap?
That
Okay.
guy. Ugh.
People that claim they're showing something that like I personally know, like I'm going hard on my couples therapist say that's what I was saying
Yeah.
is like something
Yeah,
my
yeah.
couples therapist says is that like she says to my husband, Emily doesn't care about the process, she cares about the outcome. So it's right. It's like you keep telling me about like the process, but if there's no outcome from it, what does that do?
Yes.
Right? Like it's a lot of words and it's not a lot of
Hmm.
action. And so it's true. People that claim they're showing no signs, people that claim they are, but they're showing no signs of improvement after several years, then you have to say to yourself, maybe this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Maybe their way of growth is actually not the outcome that I'm looking for. And I have to navigate this in a different way. And
And
that's also not about them not doing the work. They're doing the work in their way, maybe. And still, maybe that doesn't work for you.
and maybe it takes a conversation, right? Where you might be, I'm assuming, because that's our only option in this situation, that you might be stuck in the, okay, well, you say you're doing the work. I don't see you doing there. Well, why don't you clarify what that means to you, right? What would change in your relationship if you felt like they were doing the work? Because they
Yeah.
might have a completely different definition of what that looks like, right? They might see changes within themselves, within the relationship, whereas your definition of change is very different. And so I think having the conversation around what that looks like for you is and really clarifying it is really important so that you can communicate and you can come together on what that might look like for the two of you. What else we got
A
going
lot of
on?
questions about resentment, how to avoid
Yeah.
resentment, how to not feel resentment, how to not start becoming resentful. I mean, the amount of times I'm seeing the word resentment here is unbelievable. So that means
Yeah.
people are feeling a lot of resentment.
Yeah, we hear it. We hear you.
Everyone's asking about it. That's when we got summed it up,
Okay.
right?
And our favorite thing, if you listen to us a lot, we apologize because we say this all the time. One of our favorite things to say when someone says, how do I not feel this? Is that you gotta feel it. What do we
And
say?
there's no
What,
stopping it.
what was our new tagline? I keep
Fucking feel
forgetting.
it.
Fucking feel it.
They're definitely not going to let us put that on anything.
Say.
We got a really negative email. Wait, also, we got a really negative email a few weeks ago from a fellow therapist who told us how unprofessional we are for saying the F word, in which I sent her an email back and
It was
said,
so nice. She
was
said,
it? I said,
yeah,
what
it was nice. You said, we're not for everyone. And then you said something very Handmaid's Tale-y at the end.
Wait.
You said
Okay.
like go in peace or
No.
something
Okay.
under his eye.
Okay. As a reminder, I was raised Quaker, and it is if anyone else has been raised with Quakers or went to Friends school, they say this thing of like in peace. Like it's like a way that you like leave, right? And like so
Love it.
usually I sign off emails and I say like warmly Emily, but I was like, you want to know what? In this moment, I'm gonna say warmly in peace, right?
I'm gonna start signing off emails
You
under
thought it
his
was
eye.
Handmaid's Tale. You thought it was like some like under his
She
eye
probably
shit.
she probably read that email. She was like, "Oh God,
Right? She like
this
said
is way."
I mean, she sent us an entire thing about how unprofessional we are. And I was just like, okay, then like do not like
Well,
that is
listen,
fine.
that's all right. You have your own work to do if that makes you uncomfortable, right? It's the same sensitive situation. It made her uncomfortable. It brought something up for her.
Yes.
She turned it on the podcast as opposed to being like, well, what is this about me that this is making me uncomfortable? And I feel, what internalized messages do I have about being a professional? Right.
No, instead she was
So
like, you know what
that's
I'm
what I
gonna
said.
do is I'm gonna email this random podcast at 7 in the fucking morning.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
because
that was her choice. And so
her
I say
choice.
this with people, I was driving with Nikki home. She loves this, and I think she's taken it with her, and I hope she's listening to this, and she obviously is because she
She
listens
doesn't
to
have a
everyone.
choice. It's her
She doesn't have a
job.
choice. It's her job. But we were in the car driving home from Westchester. Someone cut us off, and they were like beeping at. It was just maybe they gave us the finger. Nikki was like, "What the fuck?" And I said, they have their own demons. And she loved that. She's taken it
Loves
with
it.
her
Yeah.
ever since. And I think that's
Was
something
it me?
could you could you imagine if it was you?
I will also say I actually never honk at anyone.
Yeah,
Like
no.
you know what I mean? Like if anything, I would pull up next to the driver and I would do one of these. Ah!
I would be like, I'm so sorry. It's like when someone bangs into me. It's like someone like body checks me and I'm like, oh, so sorry I was in your way. Like I should get that. I need to work on that in
Yeah, that's
therapy.
something. Okay, so let's talk about avoiding resentment, right? One, you can't avoid it, but you can communicate it. You can also check in. It's giving you information. If I am feeling resentment, what is that saying? This feels unbalanced. This feels unfair. This feels, I feel hurt about this. I feel rejected. Like, what are the feelings that are like underneath what that resentment is? And what is the point and function of that resentment? Often, I believe it's self-protective. If I hate you, if I hate this part of you, then it doesn't hurt when it keeps showing up. So it's a great way to actually, so I actually think feeling resentment is a way of not feeling disappointment and grief.
Oof. Say that again.
I think please don't make me do that. Very anxious right now. Where's resentment on the feelings wheel?
Yeah, it's a good
I'm
question.
gonna find it.
You say feeling resentment is a way to not feel disappointment and grief, right?
Yeah,
It's protective for you. That
it's
it's almost like
anger.
it's anger, right? It's like a top layer emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens too, right? If we're talking about our, in our relationship, I'm keep thinking this is like your romantic relationship because I think this is where it comes up,
Yeah.
the most besides your like familial relationship. Um, that sometimes we like if our partner's not doing the work and we're doing the work and we want them to do more work on themselves, it comes out more, we express it more in the face of resentment as opposed to sitting down with them at some point and be like, hey, listen, I'm really unhappy. Like I need to let you know I'm really, really unhappy. Like these parts of our relationship are really affecting me. And we need to talk about what we do about that because I really feel like I'm doing a lot of work in therapy. I understand that maybe therapy is uncomfortable for you, but let's talk about, do we go to couples therapy or is there anything else that you can do, whether it's read or something where we can get on the same page because how we are right now is not working for me. And I think so often, instead of sitting them down and really holding them accountable, that will react to them in the heat of anger or the
Mm,
heat of resentment and say, well, you need to go to fucking therapy.
yeah.
Right. And then and they're like, I'm not going to fucking therapy. Right. It gets pulled into your arguments as opposed to you really sitting down, being really serious and stern with them and saying, this is really important to me. And it's really important to our relationship.
Jen, so I don't make a unilateral decision right now. I think that we should do a two-part episode about this because I actually think we have a lot to talk about.
Wow.
What do you think about that idea? Just as I'm going through these questions.
Listen,
We're gonna do two in a row, I think.
let's do two in a row.
Okay.
Oh, so
All
are we
right.
coming? Listen, I have no sense of time. Are we coming to the end of our time? Is that why you're saying that?
No, I'm just because I'm looking through all these questions and I'm like, oh, let's
Oh,
two
wow.
part this baby. Like, so I don't feel rushed through this, right?
Totally.
Because, okay, because there is just so many people that here's what I hear from people and all through all these questions. I am desperate for people in my life to show up. I'm desperate for people in my life to have depth and good relationships, right? What I'm hearing all these people say is, I don't want to cut off family members, right? I feel like there is this thing, like, and we talked about it before, like, hey, man, like, if shit's abusive, fucking cut it, right? Like, if stuff is incredibly unhealthy for you, you cut it. No shame, right? Like, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. But what I hear from most people is like, I do not want to cut off. I don't want to lose people in my life. I love my family. I love my partner. I want to make this work. But what if I'm the only one doing it?
Yeah.
And here's what we talk about is that here's the cool news is two people to set a dynamic one person to change it, baby. You're that person listening.
You're turning into like a sports announcer.
Do. Okay, so all right, so we'll do two parts here. I just wanted to make sure.
We clearly don't watch sports.
Okay, I have to really,
I don't know
what
what
was
that. I don't
the
know.
noise I made?
Do-do-do-do-do-do. Is that like is that football?
Isn't your cat named after the NFL?
I'm sorry. What?
I thought
Nelly?
Nelly was Nelly for NFL. Didn't you talk about that?
What?
Did I make the entire thing
Do you
up?
think? Do you think I love football?
No, I thought Bill did maybe.
No.
Did I make that entire thing up? Because I'm pretty sure I've told every
Did
person
you?
Nelly's.
Okay, wait. Tell me just to backtrack. Where would that come from with the NFL? Is it just the beginning?
Okay, I don't feel like I made that up.
1,000% you made that up.
Okay.
But we can go with that. Yes, Nelly is named after the NFL. I love football. It is my favorite sport. I used to
I
play
can't contain
football.
myself. The fuck?
Okay,
Did I make that up?
yeah, I think you might have. Also, speaking of, I'm sorry to get us off topic. Emily got a new addition to her family.
We'll do it in part 2. We'll show him.
Oh,
Show her. I got a dog. I got a new dog. She's a puppy.
and
And
she's so cute.
Dolly Parton.
Yeah,
We'll
show
Yeah.
her in part 2. Okay.
Okay, I'll show her part 2. Okay.
Yeah.
She was sleeping right now, so I didn't want to bring her up, right? Okay.
Right, fair.
We're going back.
Sorry.
All right. How to continue a relationship with my mom who won't respect my boundaries around diet culture topics and constantly bring up that I'm not pregnant yet. So it sounds like you have set small boundaries. Please don't talk to me about that, right? You might have to elevate that boundary and say, Mom, every time you bring that up, I'm going to physically walk out of this room. I'm going to leave. I'm going to end our time. Right? Done.
Yes.
The other thing you might have to say is there will be people in your life that no matter how many boundaries you set, still do not give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
And still cannot. Whether they are hyper fixated on something, right? So that's also the other thing is constantly bring up the fact that I'm not pregnant. I was married in 2019. Like, yeah, it's your life. You don't have to fucking get pregnant now,
Right.
ever. If you do, whatever. Right? So you might have to set like a really hard boundary. Like, I'm actually going to physically remove myself from this conversation. I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to end our time together. You can do something like that. Or something that we also have to say is, how do we navigate saying, you're doing it again, aren't you? Here we go. Tried, Mom. What do I do now? Right? Like, literally, right? Like, tell me. Mom, I've tried to ask you in every way. What?
Yeah.
What's happening?
What else can I do?
Babe?
Yeah.
What's going on here, right? Like, because something's not connecting.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to pull my hair out and I don't know what to do. And I love you and I want this to work, but I think I have to leave the house.
Right. That's what I was going to say, is that I think those two things can be connected, right? Or you could be like, Mom, listen, you're doing it again. I need to let you know that, because I've tried to set this boundary so many times, because it keeps happening, I just got to walk out of the house. I really need to take care of myself because this boundary is not being respected.
Yeah.
And you're right. There will be people in your life who continue to push your boundaries over and over and over and over again. And I think that can be so challenging. And I think alongside that, something that I think is really important is checking in with yourself when that's happening and saying, okay, how do I manage my own emotional response to this because it keeps happening and my boundaries aren't being respected? Because I think sometimes the only way you can calmly say, Mom, what's going on with, I've said this over and over, is your ability to regulate your own emotions during that time. And so I think figuring out what does that look like when this happens again, I think prepping for it, right? To know if your mom if you set boundaries over and over again and it's not being respected, shit's going to keep happening.
It's not.
It's going to keep happening.
There's no magical sauce here, baby.
Because mom isn't doing her own work, right? And that's the point of this. Mom's not doing her own work. And so you got to prep for this. It's going to keep happening, right? Your boundaries might not be being respected. Maybe because mom hasn't done her own work. Her boundaries were never respected. She believes that she can push her own, feelings onto you because someone pushed their own feelings onto her. Exactly. And so it's continuing to be perpetuated, but you get to break that cycle. And you get to say, I'm walking out now, right? I'm not going to do this anymore. Listen, maybe I can't talk to you as much because my boundaries aren't being respected. And then you go from there. But I think prep for it, right? When people continue to do the same thing and they're not doing the work to change it or they don't acknowledge it, you kind of have to expect that it's going to keep happening.
Yeah. Okay, so somebody said, so this is probably not the same person, but I think that the question goes well together. How do I not want to pull my hair out every time we interact? If you want to pull your hair out every time you interact with someone, you're going to need to take a little break from that relationship.
I can't hear you.
You lost me?
I lost you.
Really? Really? You can't hear me at all? I seem
Can
to
you hear
be
me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly, and I'm picking up on all my
Oh,
stuff.
I can hear you now.
What happened?
I don't know.
I was picking up on all of my other shit.
Oh, it said my internet connection's unstable. That
Oh,
might be.
no. All right, well, let's just
Okay.
keep recording and just
Okay,
let it
let's
go.
keep going.
Okay, so let's start that again. So the next person who wrote in, how do I not want to pull my hair out every time we interact? If you want to pull your hair out every time you interact with someone, it's time to take a little bit of a timeout. Because one, is this hurting you to be with them? What is this doing to your mental health? What is the repercussions to you? Also, if I was in a relationship with someone and every time they're with me when they pull their hair out, I would be like, don't be in a relationship with me. I don't want you to feel that way about me either. Right?
Right.
So if it is that much of a trigger, you can de-escalate when you are that triggered up. Right? So we have to find a way to, one, how do you take a break when you're that triggered? How do you time out yourself? If you feel that thing of like, oh my God, like I can't take this, like I'm freaking out, like I'm gonna go to the bathroom, remove yourself. This is when you do your fake cigarette break. Took up smoking, gotta go.
It took up smoking. Just
Gotta
a
go,
side
right?
note, took up
Anything,
smoking.
right? Like I gotta go outside. I'm feeling right, like I can feel myself like getting like a little bit
It's hot in
overwhelmed.
here. It's
It's
really
hot in
hot in
here.
here. Need a break.
Yes. Go outside and say to yourself, okay, what is coming up for me right now? I'm so mad at that other person, but what's the feeling? Besides the anger and rage I'm feeling towards them that makes me want to hurt myself and pull my hair out, what is actually the emotion that's coming up for me? You're going to de-escalate yourself. You're going to regulate your feelings. And then am I able to re-enter? And if you are not, then go home for the day. Figure it out. Take a break. Figure out a thing. You want to know what? I'm actually like, I'm so overwhelmed. I need to go take a shower. Give yourself a 30-minute break, right? Sometimes you don't de-escalate down at 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 10, it's 20, it's 30, it's 40. But you've got to be responsible of how you take care of yourself in that situation. And if it is the same thing every time that you're that triggered, it is time for a break. That doesn't mean a cut off. It means a break.
There should be I don't know if it's like a fidget toy or something where you can pull hair out. You know, like the pimple popper.
That's what you got out of that.
Yes. That.
Probably already invented, dude. Everything's invented.
I feel like there should be something where you could
you could just get a fidget toy.
Yeah, a fidget toy or something, but there's something about, I don't know, like, so.
Well, it's trichotillomania, right? Like, yeah, like there's something very gratifying about that calms you.
Exactly. And there's thinking about, when you want to you're trying to get energy out of your body, right? Your brain is sending you stress signals to the rest of your body. And that is where that feeling is coming from of like, I need to pull something, I need to get this energy out. And so what we're saying is you're going to complete the stress response cycle by going outside instead of pulling your hair out, by de-escalating yourself by going your hair out, by buying a fidget toy where you can pull the hairs out of it. Right. So like, we're trying to help you de-escalate or find a way to complete that stress response cycle in a different way, in a way that feels healthier for you and a way that feels like you have a little bit more control over. And so as opposed to just having to sit with it, right? When you have that, when you're sitting with that energy in your body, it can be really hard to sit there. And so finding ways to regulate that can be hard, but it might mean taking yourself out of the situation. So yeah, that's where my fidget toy idea came from.
It's really good.
Thank
All right.
you.
In part 2, Jen talks about trademarking her fidget toy. Okay. We're going to do Dear Em and Jen, and then we're going to do a part 2 with this so we can get through the rest of this and get deeper into this. Okay. Are you ready for Dear Em and Jen?
I'm so ready.
Dear Em and Jen, This may be a strange question, ... I know you have a ton of clinicians who listen and a lot of clinicians in training, like myself. Yay, welcome to the field. I'm wondering if you have ever done a podcast or considered doing one on how families of new therapists or training therapists deal, or how we should deal with them. LOL. For reference, my husband the other day asked me to not use him or our relationship as a pet project for school. I'm only one third of the way through my MA and have never once suggested doing so. The only assessments I've made about anyone have been myself. As you've said, grad school is the most expensive therapy you can get. So true. I'm wondering if this is a common issue. Thanks. P.S. Maybe obvious, but I love your show. I
Thank you.
didn't have to say the P.S., but I did. That one was probably for us, but I still said it out loud. Okay. Listen, I can understand why that could be triggering for your partner. Let's be honest, right? Like, I mean, how many times, Jen, how many times have you been in an interaction with someone and they've been like, are you therapizing me right now? And I'm
Every day of my life.
I'm like, your husband does that to you. I'm like,
Literally every day.
I'm like, no, I'm not doing that right now. Like, I'm too busy being angry and being not contained.
See, like I, on the other hand, am too busy therapizing them.
So that's where we're drastically different, right? Okay, so which from the Emmalee to Jen spectrum, where do you land?
There should be an Emmalee to
There should
Jen
be.
spectrum. I love that.
Right? Like Emmalee is like, I'm too busy being uncontained in my own feelings.
I am all like intellectual.
Jen
What's
is
going on for
intellectualizing.
you? And so, yeah, that's a good question. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Okay. So one, yeah, can your partner feel it for you? Because I also do think at the beginning, I think in grad school, if I'm being perfectly honest, I was using my family and myself as a pet project. You don't have anything
Same.
else to use it. You don't, what other choice you got?
Also, they ask you to.
You gotta write about your shit and
You
your
got to
family all the
write about
time.
all your shit. I personally was really struggling in grad school with interactions with my family. The more I found out, you
Yeah.
find out so much that you didn't see before. And it can be really painful for those things to come up.
Yeah.
And if you're still interacting with your family in the same way, it's almost impossible to be able to emotionally separate that because you're doing the work in grad school.
Yeah.
And so I guess one thing I want to say is like, it's okay in a way that you're doing the work and that it's going to come out in your interactions.
Yeah.
I think that that's only natural, but it's also natural when you're learning something about yourself and about your family and you're changing something that your interactions are going to change. And the way in which you function in your relationships is also going to change, and the people in your life also have to adjust to that. So it is going to cause it is going to break the homeostasis in your relationships. It just is.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, well, it's one of the things I always think about is like at the time, right? 2 years. It's such an intensive. Our program was 2 years because they didn't give you a choice to do a part time like we had. Like
Yeah.
part of a requirement of our grad program was like you had to do full time year round. And I think we also required that of our interns. I'm like, oh, it's so intense. I'm like, oh wait, is that part of our qualification to work for us? Okay.
Actually, I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
We'll have to ask Amelia.
Well, ask Amelia that question. Okay, so like here's what I think. At the time, those 2 years were so fucking intense, and you're learning so much, so fast. But now that we're all these years out, it feels like it was such a small piece, right? Like everything that I've learned since then, all the other reading you do, all the other like certifications you do and other stuff, all the stuff you learn from your colleagues, from your clients, fuck, even from the goddamn internet, right? Like I learned shit from social media,
Oh yeah.
I just feel like there's so much more. So here's what I would say. I want you to tell yourself that this is a drip in the glass. It's an important glass. It's a foundational part of the glass. It definitely covers the bottom, but it's not filled yet.
Yeah.
And so the things that you are feeling and the overwhelmed and all this stuff, I want you to say to yourself, this is 2 years out of many. All the stuff I'm learning now, it's foundation, but it's not everything. And so, yeah, that's also intense for the people around me as well. And I think at the time I was so focused on me, I didn't see how it was for other people. Right? That probably didn't feel. Now, I was in a really unique situation in my relationship that my partner was at grad school far away. in a different city. And so we like talked very little during grad school. I mean, if you remember, like, I feel
Yeah.
like when I was presenting my thesis and he was doing his, like, we didn't talk for like a month. We were both so busy. And so for me, it was like a really individualized experience and it was like kind of far away, but I was really triggered by a lot of my family stuff during that time.
Me too.
And so that was tough to move through that. And now I feel like separated it. So it is like part of the things to say is like, how do I like kind of breathe through this 2 years
Hmm.
and navigate this and know that like it's a drip.
That is so beautiful.
That's all I have.
That's all you need.
But maybe we'll do a full episode for clinicians in training, I think.
I think that's a great
I
idea.
love, first of all, I love you, whoever wrote this in.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And let's do an entire, in October, we'll do an entire episode for clinicians in training.
I love that.
Okay. All right. See you part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2. Hey, why don't you do the outro, Jen?
Fuck. I'm so bad at
No,
it.
you're
Okay.
really good, babe. Try.
Okay. I think the pumpkin spice latte is going to help me today.
That or you're gonna shit your pants. Either one.
One of the two. If you enjoyed this episode, or if you think that someone in your life who isn't doing the work would enjoy this episode, send it on over to them. I'm sure that'll go over well. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and follow on Apple Podcasts. If you are looking for a clinician, we have some incredible therapists that are ready to help you in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Florida, California, Massachusetts. Did I miss any?
You say New York?
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds good to me.
Perfect. And
In person in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and
Westchester.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And we're opening up a new Philadelphia location. It's going to be beautiful. Hopefully mid-October. Get ready for it. We love you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget to grow yourself. You gotta know yourself.